All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my name is Lee Dempster, and I will be interviewing Fumiko Chiuini,
Mm-hmm.
who's the Japanese teacher at the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And my first question to you will be, what was your path to the academy?
My path to the academy, um, my life is over different continents so far, and I lived in Europe for 15 years before I came to this continent, the United States. And before the life in Europe probably has the key to this job at the academy because when I was studying at my university, International Christian University, where education had a lot of emphasis on raising future members of society who can contribute to bridge nations. And I really wanted to become an interpreter. And at the same time, I thought the goal I had in my mind since I was 15, which was bridge countries, and I thought could be also accomplished by teaching Japanese to foreign people or doing other things. And this other thing was doing a research. So I did a research, for example, on how mixed marriages um, experience clashes of cultures and how they resolve it. And I was interviewing people who were married with people from different countries. So I tried these things because my goal of mission in my life since I was little was to bridge countries. So after having worked as a researcher and then in England, and then for many years in Italy, I worked as a conference interpreter for Japanese and British, Japanese and Italian companies and government bodies. Life took me here by a surprise to Muncie because of my husband's job. And so about a year after we moved here, it dawned on me I was going to live here for many years because my husband accepted to continue working here. So I looked for a job and I was very lucky because when I came here in 1989, the University of Ball State just started Japanese programs. So they hired me as a part-time teacher. And luckily, I had this qualification from my university in Japan to teach Japanese to um, native English speaking college students. So it was just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that, and in the meantime, Academy started to offer Japanese, and they hired me the first year. They offered Japanese. So ever since, I've been here.
I
Yeah.
see. Have you had success in bridging countries, would you
I
say?
think so, because through the job of the academy, let's say exclusively about the job of the academy, I think many students became interested in the Japanese culture, and they also tried to become fluent in Japanese so they can personally communicate with Japanese people. And as a result of that, they had these aspirations to go from Muncie to college to study more Japanese and then go to Japan. Some of them are still there, some of them came back, but many of them still work in the area where they can use their Japanese and knowledge of Japanese culture. So I feel that I have been contributing now to what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Which aspects of your work at the academy have had the greatest meaning for you?
Um, um, let's say it's a 2-year program.
Mm-hmm.
And when they finished the program, I saw that student had a very good foundation in the language. And also in the area of culture, um, I felt as if my mission of giving them a broad but important cultural knowledge about Japan, I think many of them got it. And so, that's very meaningful to me. Yeah.
That you're able to teach us how like the Japanese culture works
Yeah,
and broaden
and
our horizons.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Um, what do you wish you had known about the academy before you began to work here?
Um, it's specifically about the first years I worked here because it corresponded with the time I was a novice in this country. So, um, especially in the first years, I didn't know much about American culture. I didn't know much about American teenagers' lifestyle. And so sometimes I think I was unreasonably demanding, and I was treating them like people I used to work with before in Italy, like CEOs and those people who had great responsibilities in society, who never would not do assignments, And so I started to treat my students in the very first year I started to teach here like CEOs, in the sense that you give assignment, and I just took it for granted that they would all come back to me. And then I realized, no, I'm dealing with people who are totally different. And so the second year I adjusted. But I think that kind of knowledge about American teenagers, I think, was something I wish I had known from before. Not just in the first year, but in the next 2 or 3 years. Luckily, I was part-time then. But I think that the knowledge of my students um, increased, like with an acceleration as I became full-time and I immersed myself with the teaching here rather than combining it with post-state teaching. Or I also used to do advisor to post-state students who came from Japan. So at a certain time, I became full-time at the academy, and my contact with the student was increased. So, yeah.
You said you taught Ball State students, correct? What's the difference between Academy students and Ball State students?
Frankly speaking, academy students in general are much smarter than the average Ball State students. That was one difference. So, for example, I made different tests, one for Ball State and one for academy, even in the first year when I used the same textbook. And the teaching at the academy is really unique. So I had to come up with a very unique curriculum which would meet specifically the needs of the academy students. So I could really, to my heart content, either accelerate, the pace, or slower the pace, in the way that the academy students with their caliber of intelligence would really learn and absorb the material. So at Ball State it was different because I was not the boss, and I had to do what the boss would tell me to do. Another difference is academy students are minors. They are younger than Ball State students. So you can almost see, definitely see physically the students here are young students, and at Ball State they are adults, right? Young adults. And so I think the the academy students, they have all these qualities of teenagers, right? And being very smart. And maybe the Ball State students were not as smart, or like academy students, but they were still a little more mature as a person and already thinking of definitely about future, many of them. So that's the difference. Yeah.
How does the social dynamic of the academy workplace compare to that of your previous workplace?
So my interpreting job and this job. That's an interesting question. My previous job was a freelance job. So I gradually built up clientele, and came to a point where I could choose my clients. So that's the dynamics, and I would also deal with how much I wanted for compensation. And so I was a very strong person. I could decline jobs if they tried to, how do you say, lower the pay. And it was a very, very, how do you say, individual, really, like the word says, freelance, individual. It's totally based on your skill as an interpreter. You hear Italian, translate as precisely as possible into Japanese. You hear Japanese and you try to interpret that as precisely as possible into Italian all the time. And it was a very, very, how do you say, intellectually tiring job, and was paid well, The dynamics here at the academy involves much more of the group work. How do you say, getting along well with the other faculty members and knowing how to deal with students, especially knowing how to be kind, but at the same time be strict with the students. So I think a different kind of thoughts had to mature in my mind because of the difference of this dynamics. And an interesting anecdote is, since I had never worked in Japan in an institution like the academy, and my only experience of a school or schools in Japan, schools were in Japan, not in Italy or in England where I lived before. So I tended to bring over my experience in the Japanese schools and how people acted by observing how the teachers used to treat themselves among themselves, etc., to this environment. This happened in the very first year. In Japan, people are very collective in the workplace, and they share a very large room. Let's say academy has about 30 teachers. Then all of those 30 teachers would be sharing a one big room with desks side by side. So when you enter the room, you say to everybody present, "Good morning," or "I'm so sorry, but I'm going to leave before you. Please pardon me for that." So this kind of group feeling was very big. And when I came here, I brought that here. And I would peep in, all of the offices before I left school saying, "Sorry, I'm going home before you." But then I thought, well, this is not the culture. Mm-hmm. When you're done, don't bother other people, you just quietly leave. So in the beginning, I thought, it's kind of strange. Also in the classroom, in Japan, when students leave the classroom, they always say something to the teacher, "Sorry, we are leaving before you," or something. And in the beginning at the academy, when I was teaching, I didn't make students say that. And I always thought, they all live like that and something is missing, And this is after all a Japanese class. And then it dawned on me, 失礼します. So ever since, I think students, if they don't remember anything from my class after 20 years, they still remember probably 失礼します.
Yes, I always have the urge to say that now when I leave a class.
Yeah,
so.
See? Yeah, that's it, yeah.
All right. How do you think having worked at the academy will affect your future?
My future? Yeah. Greatly. One is mental. I will cherish all the great memories and all the wonderful things I learned working here. The interactions I have had with students, interactions I have had with teachers, they all gave me something, a lot of things. So that's mental. I will always cherish it in my future. The second thing is probably about work. When I leave here, I will definitely retire, and I will leave the United States and go back to where I used to live before, which is Italy. And sometimes I wonder, maybe just doing what, quote unquote, I like. May not be for me. So I thought maybe I'll do something, and that might be teaching Japanese to Italian people. And with the academy experience, I think without too much effort, I can teach in Italian about Japanese culture and the language, almost like a hobby. And in a way, I kind of look forward to that. Yeah.
So would you consider the academy experience a positive one?
Extremely positive. It's taken up, now I'm 59 now, and it's taken up 20 years of my life. That's a big portion. And I really think that personally, I couldn't have been luckier, because it is true, I was ready with the qualification to teach Japanese to American college students. But who could have told me that as I came to Muncie, Ball State started Japanese. A year later, Academy started Japanese, and I was ready. I mean, I was so lucky. And so I consider myself, because of that, one of probably the luckiest people. And in the beginning, I didn't know I was going to like teaching. It turned out that I really like it. I enjoy the interaction with people. I discovered something about myself too.
Is there, well, that was the last of my questions. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Uh, Not really, but since you're my interviewer, I could say there have been interesting experiences. I had two families where mothers are Japanese, and two brothers from each of those two families came to the academy year after year. And on different years, I was able to teach those four students. And that's been fun. And with the older ones, they were exposed more to the Japanese language. So I used to teach the Japanese using native Japanese high school students' Japanese textbook. And that was fun. And also with the younger ones, I discovered that those students' weaknesses and strengths, right? So that was a learning to me. Maybe one more thing, yeah. For many years, I started in '95, and up to this year, which is 17 years after, each year I asked some of my best students who are not exposed to Japanese at home, that's a qualification, to the Japanese speech contest. And that's been really fun too, because in the formal teaching, you really don't get to know a lot about in depth, about each student. But through the speech contest, each year, many students wrote wonderful essays about their lives, and of course, the fact that they won, Midwestern prizes and then the national contest in Los Angeles, that also was great. But to me, every year it was a joy to learn more about American young people's, way of thinking, what they are thinking about, and what problems they have, how they try to overcome it. So that's been a lot of fun. So yeah, that was something extra. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
I appreciate it.